Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TFT patch rundown video. Today we'll be breaking down the latest patch 12.9. My name is Tiltruth and I'll be stepping in for the next few videos. Strap in folks, this is wild as they're sticking to the usual schedule, making the last few patches of a set absolutely bonkers. There's a new system mechanic, tons of champion buffs, and a few trait adjustments. We'll do our best to cover all of the relevant changes, but there's a lot of them, so be sure to check out the patch notes. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. But before we begin, don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone and help make this video happen. We host many TFT show tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to follow all of our Giant Slayer TFT social medias. Alright, let's get back to the video. Kicking off this crazy patch is a new system mechanic they're introducing. Essentially what they're doing is giving everyone an egg at the start of the game. The egg has multiple possible sizes, with the larger sized eggs taking longer to hatch but providing more stuff. Don't worry though, everyone gets the same sized egg. The contents will vary, with the only guarantee being a tome of traits. Depending on the egg size, the impact on the overall game will be low or insanely high. Basically, things are going to get crazy. This definitely throws a wrench in the overall competitive integrity because it's more variance added to the game, but since we're approaching the end of the set 6, the quote for fun factor has been cranked to 11. We wish everyone excellent luck. Let's move on to the augment changes, which come with a few changes to some of the certain augment tiers showing up. Nothing too crazy, but they have reintroduced gold, silver as a possible combination. In addition to that, they've increased the chance of an all prismatic game, though the total odds of any prismatic augments showing up is still the same. And as we said, these adjustments are relatively tame. It seems augments in general are getting a tamer treatment than the rest of the meta, as most of the changes are relatively small. For example, Electro Charge is receiving a buff with the overall scaling increasing. While this is a good change, it's pretty safe. But a buff is a buff, and Electro Charge is likely to be a viable pickup once again. They are also adding more restrictions to augments, such as Metabolic Accelerator, only showing up on one form. Restrictions are a good thing for augments as a whole, so it's good to see they're continuing to add more and more, which bodes well for the upcoming set 7. All of the cybernetic augments are a bit too good overall, so all three, Implant, Uplink, and Shell, are getting smacked by the nerf bat. The nerfs to the higher tiers are pretty large, meaning insta-picking a cybernetic augment is no longer a given. Now players have an actual choice. That said, the nerf is only for bonus health, so the secondary stats remain quite good, which means time will tell whether or not the 3 cybernetic augments remain high in value or not. Time to shift over to trait changes. Overall, the theme here is a lot of buffs to the higher tiers of various traits. That is because every player is being given the free tome of traits from the egg, making it much easier to hit vertical traits. Most of the buffs aren't too crazy, but there's definitely a few game changers mixed in. The quintessential vertical trait of the set, of course, is Chemtech. Chemtech gets some juicy buffs to both the healing and bonus attack speed at the higher tiers. Will this be enough for Chemtech boards to become popular again outside of Renata? It's hard to say, but 9 Chemtech certainly looks quite strong, so we may see more interesting Chemtech boards rise up from these buffs. Possibly one of the largest changes is to Colossus, as they've added an extra tier for the synergy. If, for whatever reason, you end up with 3 Colossus on your board, they will give an additional 800 health, meaning the total health each Colossus will receive is 1600. Now that's a lot of health. But it's also ridiculously hard to ever be in a position where you're running 3 Colossus champions. For sure a fun change in practice, but we may never actually see it utilized. Enchanters are mostly known for being a splash trait, meaning you only use 2 or 3 champions on your board. To entice players to chase to the higher tiers, they have buffed the magic resistance along with the healing and shielding. Maybe we'll see some more 5 enchanter boards in patch 12.9. After basically gutting Enforcers by changing it to only a 3-piece synergy, they're now changing it to also have a 5-piece tier. The bonus for having 5 Enforcers is an 80% buff, which only applies to Enforcer champions. That's a lot of bonus attack speed, but it may be difficult to obtain even with an Enforcer emblem. There's definitely going to be some interesting possibilities with the bonus attack speed on carries you give an Enforcer emblem to, especially since only Jace benefits from the baseline Enforcers. That said, we may see a crazy combination of 5 Enforcers with True Justice and Caitlyn 3 as a carry. Guess what trait may be back in the meta? Hextech. Tiers 6 and 8 are receiving pretty good buffs, so chasing vertical Hextech may be doable. Whether or not it will be actually viable remains to be seen, but hey, Sivir always manages to show up as a top carry somehow in every meta, and these Hextech buffs may be the reason in 12.9. Of course, a for fun patch is going to have mercenary changes. They are lowering the gold gained from early losses when playing 3 to 5 mercenaries because it may be too easy to have the trait active every game. Don't worry though, because 7 mercenaries is going from an average of 8.9 gold per orb to 11.37 gold. That's a crazy increase considering it's averaged. Get ready for lots and lots of mercenary boards this patch. Mutant is being left alone for the most part except for a buff to bio-leeching mutation. Omnivamp is going up to 60/100% even when playing 5 or 7 mutants. That's a lot of Omnivamp, and we may end up seeing some interesting boards pop up when that mutation is active. Socialite is gaining a nice little buff as the bonus damage is going up to 18% from 15% for the first tier of Socialite. This doesn't change much because Socialite is already highly valued, it just makes it even stronger in the meta. Oddly enough, they are reverting the 7 Syndicate buffs from the last patch back to the previous numbers. The reason is likely because it'll be a lot easier to hit 7 Syndicate, but let's be honest, it's not like Syndicate was overpowered or even all that relevant in the meta. It's possibly one of the stronger changes for the patch that's meant to be all about crazy buffs and for fun gameplay. Even though it looks minor, 4 Scholars mana generation is going from 12 to 15, meaning we may see a lot more 4 Scholar boards. This is great news for any Syndra reroll fans in particular because she has been a fringe composition for quite a while. And to the end trait changes, we have a nerf to the Innovator Dragon as its health is going down to 1025 to 1125. Since it may be easier to hit 7 Innovators, this nerf makes sense, but come on. Let the dragon be overpowered to usher us in towards the next set, which is literally dragon themed. Oh well, Innovators should still be pretty strong. Up next, let's dive into champion changes. Again, there are a lot of adjustments here, so we recommend reading the full patch notes for a list of changes. Starting off with the 1 cost, we have buffs for Caitlyn. Basically, they gave her the good old 5 attack damage buff and increased the damage of her ability at every tier. She'll likely be quite a bit better early game as an IMO holder, and with the Enforcer trait changes, there's a world where Caitlyn 3 is a viable rerolled carry. Speaking of reroll, Jarvan is gaining a buff in his abilities attack speed bonus with a sizable increase of 10% at tier 3. Maybe we'll see some early game rerolling for Jarvan and other Hextech champions with a mid-game transition into Sivir. These rerolling themes continue as they are buffing Poppy's shield damage at 3 from 240% to 280%. We may finally see the return of Candylight board from previous sets where Poppy 3 was utilized as a main damage dealer. Of course, we're talking about 1-cost reroll boards. We can't ignore the buffs they're giving to Twitch. Twitch reroll has stayed somewhat relevant throughout the mid set, but with them now buffing his damage every tier, we may see it rise again to dominance. That said, with so many other things being buffed, these changes may only keep Twitch relevant. Time flies as we move into 2-cost units with Zillion being adjusted in several ways. His damage is going up across every tier and his max mana is being reduced. Though the first cast is still the same mana requirement, with faster subsequent casts, it makes sense for them to reduce the duration of their stun at higher tiers. Regardless of that minor nerf, the Time Flies composition may be more relevant than ever in 12.9. Surprisingly, they're nerfing Warwick's on-hit healing at every tier. This is surprising mainly because it seems they want reroll boards to be popular in 12.9, and the AoE composition has been a staple for the reroll metas in previous patches. Maybe they just want other compositions to have their time in the moonlight since Warwick has had plenty of time to shine before. 3-cost units have a lot going on, with one of the largest changes being buffs to Cho'Gath. They have increased his attack damage by 10 and the number of feast stacks at lower tiers. In addition to that, Cho'Gath gains larger much faster by 20%, which doesn't really do anything other than make him look more scary. Overall, decent buffs, but is it enough for players to want to play 3 Colossus? Cashing out with mercenaries will be a lot easier with buffs to Gangplank, as his ability to deal damage is going up from 110, 175, 275, from 110, 160, 225. We may even see some reroll Gangplank boards pop up in the meta. VIP Leona's health regeneration is going up to 1.25% from 0.8%, which, by the way, is a lot. This may make an early VIP Leona absolutely bonkers as a frontline and can easily carry a board to level 8. Senna is having her max mana reduced and healing increased, so we may get a chance to see some Senna carry compositions, especially since they also buffed enchanters. Tryndamere gains 50 health and a minor buff to his empowered auto attacks, but with nothing substantial to make him truly stand out. But remember that Chemtech was also buffed, so Tryndamere as a carry may be viable. Moving into our forecast, we have a lot of buffs for Alistar to once again entice players towards that 3 Colossus stream board. The TLDR is a lower max mana with higher damage on his ability. To balance them, they've lowered the stun duration of tiers 1 and tier 2 by a small amount. Again, like Cho'Gath, this may not be enough to get players excited for only having 3 champions on their board. What's this? Not a 5 attack damage buff to Draven? Instead, it's a 15 attack damage. Crazy twist for sure, and honestly will help Draven a lot in becoming a more consistent carry. Holy moly, Orianna is being adjusted like crazy. Lower health, but her max mana is going up from 130 to 90, which is an insane change. In addition to that, both her damage and shielding numbers are being increased, and finally, her attack speed is going up to 0.8 from 0.75. Someone must really like Orianna because she is already one of the best champions in the meta, and now she'll be absolutely bonkers. Guess who's coming back into the meta? That's right, Aurelia. As her Blade Surge damage is going up to 75-100 from 1690, it may only look like a small amount, but any damage increase for Aurelia is going to be noticeable. Contrasting these buffs are nerfs to Sivir. We all saw this coming because Sivir has had way too much time in the spotlight. The adjustment here is the bonus attack speed of her ability, which is going down to 30-60% from 45-65%. Honestly, this probably won't matter because Sivir always manages to bounce back into relevance, but there is a slim chance we finally see a meta that Sivir doesn't dominate in. Finally, we have only one relevant 5-cost changes to Silco's ability, dealing more damage while the unit explodes. Both Tier 1 and Tier 2 are increased by 100 damage, so Silco should be even more contested than he already was previously. Our final section for today's patch preview is one item change, which is Morellonomicon. The max health burn for Morellos is going down to 10% from 20%. A 10% nerf is pretty heavy and likely will make this item significantly weaker in the meta. This also means a champion like Renata may lose a lot of value as well, since she's one of the common users of Morellos. While this does not affect the current meta, their reasoning was preparing for Set 7 as this was a planned change for the future. That said, we're sad to see it nerfed heavily concerning it wasn't overpowered in the current set. And that's all for today, folks. That was a lot to cover. We definitely didn't touch on every change. As we said multiple times, be sure to read the patch notes before diving into ranked. The meta is likely to be all over the place considering the number of wild changes, but it should be a good send-off for Set 6 as we're less than a month away from the launch of Set 7. Let us know in the comments section down below what crazy change is your favorite. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying your content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.